In a couple of weeks, the majority of our U.S. men's national team players will be taking the field for 3 games that will be, up to this point, the most important games of their lives. These will be the games that determine whether or not the U.S. men's national team is able to make it to the 2022 World Cup. Now, the big question on everybody's minds is, can the U.S. do what they need to do to qualify for the World Cup? Let's kind of look at it. The U.S. has Mexico away first, they have Panama at home, and then they have Costa Rica away. What do they need to do? Well, just about everybody agrees that the first thing they need to do is beat Panama. If you beat Panama, it puts everything back on the table. If you beat Panama and you get some other results to go your way, that's going to be enough to qualify. If those results don't go your way, it's looking like the U.S. is going to need to find another point somewhere. So it looks like at the very least, the U.S. needs 3 points, and realistically, we want to try to get 4 points. Now, this is tough. This is tough for a number of reasons, and there's a lot of reasons to be pessimistic. And I think, first of all, a lot of fans have been disillusioned by the way the U.S. has played throughout World Cup qualifying up till now. And to make matters worse, these are 3 of the strongest teams in CONCACAF that we're going to have to be up against. So there are some reasons to be pessimistic. I think, number one, you look at the injuries that the U.S. is facing. Weston McKennie's out. Weston McKennie has been our best player throughout World Cup qualifying. He's been the best player, most informed player in Europe. He's been absolutely fantastic in these last few windows for the World Cup. We're going to be without him. That is a major blow in a position where the U.S. does not have a tremendous amount of depth. So it is going to be very worrisome that we're going to have to be starting some players that don't have a ton of minutes. Players maybe like Luca De La Torre, players like Gianluca Busio don't have a ton of minutes with the other players around them. That's scary. The other scary thing is heading into this Mexico game, Tyler Adams will have a yellow card. That means Greg Berhalter has to decide, do you risk playing Tyler Adams in that Mexico game where he could potentially pick up a yellow card and be absent for that all-important game against Panama, or do you not start Tyler Adams and then you have a midfield that's missing both McKennie and Tyler Adams? This is a very, very scary decision. I've kind of been on the side where he should sit Adams in that first game because the game against Panama is too important. But it's going to be a very interesting and very tough decision that Greg Berhalter is going to have to face. The injuries do not end there. The keepers. Our top 2 keepers, the keepers who have received just about all the minutes throughout World Cup qualifying, Zach Steffen and Matt Turner, are both out with injuries, and their return is uncertain for both of them. I thought that Zach Steffen would be back relatively quickly. It hasn't looked like that. Will the U.S. be starting a teenager in Gavi Slonina? That is kind of a scary situation. To start a teenager in their first World Cup qualifier away in Mexico, that's not something that, whenever we drew things up, is really a situation that we wanted to be in. Or you bring in Ethan Horvath, a player that, while he's had a nice stretch of games, which is not something you could say about Ethan Horvath for a long time throughout his career, he hasn't played much in the last few years. He might be coming into this World Cup qualifier with 6 games having started this year. That's not something you want to see. Or it could be Sean Johnson, which, he's a fine MLS keeper. Is he the guy that we want in this situation? Maybe he can get the job done. Who knows? That's a scary situation. Gio Reyna continues to be a question mark. Gio is an absolute game changer. If healthy, he's absolutely one of the best players in this pool, but he hasn't been healthy. What's going to happen with Gio Reyna remains to be a question mark. And the last one is Chris Richards. Chris Richards is a guy who I thought was going to be a part of this World Cup qualifying window, but has an injury that's seeing him miss time. So that's just another player that the U.S. could potentially be without. That's going to stretch the reserves for the U.S. men's national team in that window. These are scary things. Combined with that, the second reason why this window is going to be incredibly scary for the U.S. men's national team. Football might be over, but MLS is coming back, and Champions League and European soccer are in full swing. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. Head over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive 50% off your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code BELIEVE to get started. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage, from sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. BetOnline is your #1 online wagering destination. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play all your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts. Is the form for the national team in away games. Frankly, the U.S. has been good at home and has been terrible away. We have not seen the form that we've seen at home away for the U.S. men's national team for a variety of reasons, and that's very scary. Now, let's compound that with the fact that the 2 away games that we're going to have are going to be at the Azteca in Mexico City and going to be away to Costa Rica, 2 locations where the U.S. historically have been god-awful, have just never been able to get results. So asking this team that has struggled away for most of qualifying to go into locations where historically no U.S. men's national team has ever done well to get a result is a scary, scary thing. However, I'm not that pessimistic going into this. I'm actually fairly optimistic. I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this window and to feel like the boys can get it done. And the first one is going to be the home form. I mentioned that the away form for the U.S. men's national team has been dismal. In fact, in my video, My Beef with Greg Berhalter, I kind of went over the differences between the home form and the away form and my issues with Greg Berhalter for not really, even though we knew what away games in CONCACAF were going to be like, we didn't really have a plan that seems sufficient enough to deal with the things that we've run into away in CONCACAF. Now, that being said, these away games are going to be very different. One of the main reasons why away games in CONCACAF have been such a struggle for the U.S. is because we've been facing low blocks and facing teams that are trying to struggle for a result, facing teams that are having a lot of negative tactics. In this particular window, I don't know if we're going to run into that. First of all, we're playing Mexico away, and Mexico is always aggressive. Mexico is a team that, while they might not mathematically need to get 3 points from the U.S. In this game, I think emotionally they need to get these 3 points from the U.S. They've lost to the U.S. 3 times in a row. Their fan base is going absolutely crazy. There's calls for Tata Martino's job. Mexico needs to come out and get a win, and hopefully for the Mexican fans, a decisive win at home against the U.S. And that means they're going to be stretched and they're going to be open. And that plays right into the strengths of the U.S. men's national team. We've seen throughout qualifying that whenever the U.S. is on a quality pitch, which they'll have in Azteca, and against an opposition that's a bit stretched, that's where the team is strongest. That's where the team's mobile midfield and the athletes all over the field and the players who are so dynamic in the transition game are able to open up and really go at the opposition. That will be in play against Mexico. That was not really in play against Canada. That was not, most of these CONCACAF teams had not opened themselves up to the counterattacking game from the U.S. That will be in play for the U.S., which is just a weapon that the U.S. hasn't been able to use, and I think will be a tremendous asset in this game away in the Azteca. And the same can be said for Costa Rica. Whenever we head to Costa Rica will be playing for their World Cup lives. They will be coming out at us. They will be throwing everything that they can at us, which will open Costa Rica to counterattacks. And I think that's where the U.S. will be able to thrive, and I think that's a tremendous asset heading into these games. And the last reason why I think we should be optimistic is the U.S. has been absolutely tremendous at home. The form at home, save from that Canada game where we got the draw against Canada, has been fantastic, especially recently. In the recent games, the U.S. is absolutely I don't want to use the word dominated, but has absolutely controlled the games. So I'm optimistic that will continue whenever the U.S. faces Panama in Orlando. While Panama is a tough side, I think the U.S. does have the quality that's going to be able to break them down and create chances, especially a Panama that's going to be guns a-blazing trying to get 3 points, a Panama that's going to be playing for their World Cup lives. I think that's going to play very much into the hands of the U.S., and that's something that's going to be that can be said for all 3 of these games in this window. And for those reasons, I think I'm a little excited about this window and potentially what can happen. And then my last thing, I know I said the last one was the last one, but here's the last one. Christian Pulisic is playing lights out right now. Christian Pulisic is in that kind of form where he can absolutely take over a game, where he can by himself just create things and just make things happen that few other players in CONCACAF can replicate. He's in that world beater form at the moment, and that is just the perfect time for the U.S. as we head into these 3 all-important World Cup qualifiers. So for those reasons, I think that the U.S. actually has a little bit more of a chance than I think a lot of us are giving them credit for heading into this window. If you look at this Mexican national team, I know the U.S. has a bunch of injuries, and it's a worrisome game to look at on paper, especially considering the history of the Mexican national team, the history of Azteca. But realistically, this Mexican national team is only getting older, and it hasn't really shown up in qualifying. The vaunted scary Mexican national team. It's a Mexican national team that's there for the taking, and we'll probably do a breakdown of the USA versus Mexico game ahead of that. But guys like Hector Herrera are only getting older. Guys like Guardado, player like Raul Jimenez. He hasn't quite been the same striker since he returned from injury, and it's just creating a lot of issues for Mexico. They're still trying to figure out who the fulcrum of their attack is. They're still trying to kind of figure out an offensive identity. They're still trying to score goals. They're still trying to figure out their defense. They still got 36-year-old players throughout the lineup. It's still going to be a struggle for them, and they still got to play 90 minutes against a lot of very young, very fast, very athletic U.S. men's national team players, and that really feeds into the hands of the U.S. men's national team. So there is a lot of optimism there. I am curious though, what are you guys' kind of thoughts about this? What are the things that you're worried about heading into this window? What do you think about Greg Berhalter's tactics heading into this? What do you think? Just all the storylines that have led up to this and converged in this. And if the U.S. is able to maintain, if they're able to win the games necessary to qualify for the World Cup, kind of what then? How do you reset? What do you think is going to be the strategy for the rest of World Cup qualifying? I don't want to talk about what happens if the U.S. doesn't qualify. I don't even want to put that out there as a thing that could happen. If that happens, we'll deal with that whenever it comes. But as of right now, I just want to think about in terms of when the U.S. does qualify. What do you think happens then? Do you think that revisit players like John Brooks? Do you think that Joe Scally gets brought in? Maybe a Jonathan Gomez? Do you think do you think the roster kind of swells? Do you think that guys like Sebastian Lletget and Christian Roldan maybe get phased out and they were just there for World Cup qualifying? What do you think kind of happens after this World Cup qualifying window? What are you afraid of? What are you worried about heading into this window? Let me know in the comment section. Hopefully we can kind of be our own therapists and reassure each other and hold each other's hands as we walk towards this final World Cup qualifying window. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you want to support the channel, you can become a member. If you really want to support the channel, you can be like Manuel Oliveras and Mike Irish and become a tier 2 member and get a shout out in the videos. If you want these videos in podcast form, the Yank Report podcast is available to you everywhere you can find podcasts. As always, si puede hablar español, dígame un comentario en español. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report brought to you by Bet Online.